Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. I wanted to take a minute to do some research on Ian David Long, the mass shooter who participated in the mass murder at the Borderline Bar and Grill. And after doing my research on the background and the history of Ian David Long, I started to see a very similar pattern to that of Nicholas Cruz, the boy who participated in the mass shooting at Parkland High School. Now, the similarities between Ian David Long and Nicholas Cruz are this. Both of these men came from single mother households due to the death of the father. And I believe it was being in that single mother household that led to these men going out here to participate in these mass shootings. Now, many in the media are saying that Ian David Long participated in this mass shooting due to the fact that he had PTSD. But I don't believe that PTSD was the thing that triggered Ian David Long going out to participate in this mass shooting at this Borderline Bar and Grill. No, I believe what led to your Ian David Long participating in the mass shooting at the Borderline Bar and Grill was beta male rage. Now, what is beta male rage? Beta male rage is something that beta males get when they are raised in single mother households. And in a beta male household, where the single mother is the leader and the authority figure, what happens is the beta male sees women as the ones having all the power and control in the household and power and control over them. And because the beta male feels emasculated by his mother and feels powerless around his mother because she is the one who has all the power and control in the early stages of his development and the early stages of his familial relationship, what happens with the beta male is he starts to simmer and boil in anger. And as he simmers and boils in this anger, not only for years, but even decades, he starts to get something I call again beta male rage. And this beta male rage is something that these men have for years, and this beta male rage is what leads to these men becoming ticking time bombs. And that's what's really scary about beta male rage, is that because these men are simmering and boiling in anger for years and even decades, no one knows what will set these men off or what they will do when they are set off. Because when a man has beta male rage, his behavior can be a spectrum of violent behaviors. His behavior can range from a screaming fit to all the way up to extreme violence like a mass shooting. And it was clear to me that this Ian David Long had beta male rage based on the behaviors I saw escalating from what I read. Now, when your Ian David Long went from the military and college to go live with his mother, we started to see the pattern I saw with beta male rage because he was punching holes in walls, he was kicking holes in walls, and he was acting erratically. And these are all manifestations and expressions of beta male rage because the beta male does not know how to control himself, and as he's losing control, people will notice that his behavior becomes extremely erratic because this man feels very powerless in his life and he feels very powerless to deal with things as related to his life situation. Now, when you take a critical look at your Ian David Long, this beta male rage that he had for years was winding up getting triggered due to several events in his life. And I believe one of the events that really triggered his anger and frustration started after he left the military. Now, your Ian David Long, he went to the military, he got married, he got divorced, And I believe that was one of the things that led to the foundation of the thing that started slowly triggering the beta male rage inside of him, because he had one failure, that his relationship was a failure, and then he went to college and he had a failure there, because your Ian David Long went to this college. He wanted to major in some sort of, I think, physical fitness or physical training or something like that. And he ran into this 19-year-old young man who he believed talked down to him. And because this 19-year-old man talked down to him, he decided to give up his whole college major. And again, this fits right within the pattern of beta males. Whenever they run into some sort of challenge, whenever they run into some sort of obstacle, instead of having the discipline and resolve to continue moving forward, they usually just wind up giving up. And this Ian David Long just gave up on his whole college aspirations and his career, all based on an interaction with a 19-year-old young man. And again, that's a textbook behavior of a beta male. And then after this, he just decided to just give up and then go again to live with his mother. Again, these are all patterns of the beta male. And this, along with the anger this guy was simmering in, it just shows that this was just another one of these beta males. And this Ian David Long, he was sitting there in this house, and again, simmering and boiling in anger. And most people, they were saying he was cheery on one side, but then he was out here and acting very strangely. Other people said he was strange and acting strangely, and again, fitting right within the pattern of these beta males. Because when it comes down to the beta male, again, his behavior is extremely erratic, and he can go from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde in less than 2 seconds based on the situation he's in. And this guy, he was one of those guys that looked like he was in that type of behavior pattern. And a lot of people, who knew him, knew that there was something wrong with this guy, but they just didn't know what it was. Some people thought it was due to his trauma in the military, but it wasn't due to his trauma in the military. It was all due to the foundation he had in that single mother household he grew up in, because your Ian David Long just did not know how to set a course for himself as a man. He was trying to make a way for himself as a man, but because he didn't have any male life skills or male survival skills, he was having a hard time navigating his course in life. And because he just didn't know how to set a course for himself, this is what I believe, again, along with the beta male rage, led to him becoming more and more frustrated, more and more angry, and he simmered and boiled in anger. And that anger showed in a Facebook post he made where he said, all you're going to do is go into thoughts and prayers. And again, that just shows how enraged this man was regarding his state in life, and it showed his malice of forethought as he participated in this mass shooting. And that's why I can say that this was not a case of PTSD, but it was a case of beta male rage. And this is the big problem with America as related to these mass shooters, is that they continue to deny the real reasons why we have seen this escalation of mass shootings and this increase in frequency of these mass shootings. Because the reason why we are having this escalation of mass shooters and this increase in frequency in mass shootings is not due to issues that many Americans in the media want to talk about, like gun control, but the real reason why we're seeing this increase in mass shootings over the last couple of months, or even the last year, is due to the fact that we have 2 to 3 generations of men out here, and 2 to 3 generations of men who have grown up in single mother households. I mean, today, 1 in 3 boys are growing up in single mother households, and because they are growing up in these single mother households, they are becoming these beta males, and they're growing up to become these beta males who are simmering and boiling in anger because they feel powerless about their role as a boy in a world that is becoming more and more gynocentric. Because in their world, all they are seeing are female leaders, female authority figures, and females in charge of everything, and they feel powerless about their place in the world, and many feel like they have no place in the world. And because they feel like they are powerless and have no place in the world, this is what's leading to many of these men becoming extremely angry, extremely frustrated, and simmering and boiling in this anger for years, then eventually exploding in this rage, where they go out and participate in this spectrum of violent behaviors. Because a lot of people will just look at these mass shootings as just isolated incidents, but they are a part of a spectrum of violent behaviors. And beta males, they just don't participate in mass shootings because that's just the extreme, but they also participate in other violent behaviors like your Ian David Long participated in, like punching holes in walls, yelling, screaming, snapping at people, and just getting angry. And when things don't go their way, that's where we start to see them participating in this spectrum of violent behaviors because life isn't working out for them and they don't know how to deal with life because they have been taught these female life skills, these female coping skills by their mothers, and they don't know how to solve a problem from a male perspective. And because they don't have those male life skills, those male survival skills, this is why these men wind up participating in this extremely destructive behavior and even self-destructive behavior like going out to commit suicide. Now, again, most people thought it was PTSD that triggered this Ian David Long's anger. But again, when they called the police and they called the mental health professionals, they started to see that this really wasn't a case of PTSD. And that's why they didn't give this Ian David Long a 72-hour hold, because they did not see that as part of the whole mental health aspect of this Ian David Long's issues. And it wasn't part of his issues because, again, what people need to start understanding is that the mental health component of what is driving these beta males crazy is not something due to trauma as related to the military, like many people thought that Ian David Long went through, but what is making many of these beta males become mentally ill is the fact that they're trying to reconcile the faulty logic they have been taught by their single mothers with the way the world works for men. Because as it relates to these beta males, in most cases, these men have been taught that the way the world works for women, and because they are trying to apply approaches that women use to work in the world in the way that the world works for men, this is what's leading to these men having a short circuit, and it's that logic short circuit that's leading to these men having mental malfunctions and then winding up falling completely apart. And because these men just don't know how to make the world work for them the way it should for a man, what is happening is, again, that's why these men are short-circuiting, malfunctioning, and simmering, boiling in anger, and then eventually exploding in rage, where they wind up destroying not only their lives, but destroying the lives of all the people around them, and participating in incidents like the one we saw in Thousand Oaks, California, at the Borderline Bar and Grill, which wind up leaving a stain on the lives of others and a stain on the lives of everyone in that community. And innocent people are losing their lives almost every day here in the United States due to these mass shootings. And we've had almost 304 mass shootings in 342 days. And that's a really scary number because we're literally having a mass shooting every day due to these beta males having a meltdown every day because these men just were not taught male life skills, they were not taught male survival skills, and because they do not know how to survive in the world as a man or how the world works for men, this is what's leading to these men becoming more and more angrier and more frustrated, and believing that the only solution they have for their problems is to destroy the world around them because they can't find a place for themselves in the world around them. And this is what really motivates men like your Nicholas Cruz, like your Elliot Rodger, like your Ian David Long, like your James Holmes, and like many of your other mass shooters to go out here, get guns legally, and then use those legally owned guns to go out here and murder people. Now, many people like your President Trump believe that you can stop these mass shooters with armed guards or things like armed guards, and you can't use an armed guard to stop a beta male on a rampage because they had security at that borderline bar and grill, and your Ian David Long murdered the security before he went on his kill spree at that borderline bar and grill. And others believe that you could use gun control laws to stop men like Ian David Long. And that's not going to work either, because when it comes down to men like Ian David Long and every other mass shooter, they all bought their guns legally, they all met the background check, and they all were oftentimes men with no criminal record whatsoever. So, background checks, gun control laws, this will not stop beta males. The big problem with the beta male is, again, the way he was raised. And because he was raised with female social traits, female life skills, and female social characteristics, this is what is the big problem with the beta male. And America refuses to acknowledge the problem that is leading to us having a mass shooting every day, because most Americans do not want to confront women about the way we are raising boys, and corporate America does not want to change its culture so that we can have mothers and fathers in the home and we can raise boys the way they're supposed to be. Because the big problem that's leading, again, to all of these mass shootings happening is the rise of the single parent household, the demonization of the American man, and the American lifestyle, which does not allow for children to be cared for in a household where they can get their emotional needs met. And because corporate America and many women want to maintain the single mother household and the rat race lifestyle, this is why we're going to see more beta males participating in rage and more beta males participating in mass shootings, because the beta male is a product of the single mother household, and because the beta male comes from the single mother household, he isn't product that a boy who winds up simmering and boiling in anger, and then eventually he winds up erupting and exploding. And there's a clear historical pattern that shows us that this increase in mass shootings correlates right with the rise of the single mother household, and it has only gotten worse as we have grown to have more and more single mother households over the last 30 years. Because if we look at the timeline as related to these mass shooters, we can clearly see how they have increased in frequency with the continuing increase in single mother households, and how these boys growing up in these single mother households is the main reason why we have seen this increase in mass shootings over the last 3 decades, and why we have seen this increase in frequency in all of these mass shootings. Because after each mass shooting, we soon find out that each of these men come from single mother households, and this is something that no one in American media want to talk about. They would rather deflect and talk about gun control, or they would rather sit there and talk about things like PTSD, but they don't want to get to the root of the problem, which is all of these boys growing up in these single mother households, going to institutions like these gynocentric schools, or being prescribed these psychotropic drugs, which lead to many of these men having their mental illnesses exacerbated, because the real reason why these men, again, become mentally ill is because they keep trying to reconcile the faulty logic they were taught by their single mothers with the way the world works for men. And then they find out that the way the world works for men is completely different than it does for women. This is what leads to these men, again, becoming very angry. And I believe that was one of the reasons why your Ian David Long was so angry and was having so many blow-ups with his mother, was he was told the way the world was going to work for him by his mother was one way, and then when he got out into the real world and found out that things were different, this is what led to him being angry. And a lot of people, they don't understand beta male anger, because beta males, they are often very quiet in their anger, and they don't really express it outwardly until they become extremely frustrated. And they will be angry and for many years and being quiet, and you won't know that these guys are just that angry. And that's what the scary part about dealing with beta males is that you don't know how angry these guys are, because they are oftentimes angry not only for years, as I've stated before, but they're angry for decades. And that anger, again, is something no one wants to deal with, because the roots of that anger mean having to confront women about the way we are raising boys, and corporate America changing its way of doing business so that mothers can have time in the home, and also changing the culture so that we don't keep demonizing fathers and devaluing fathers. Because one of the other reasons why these boys are winding up in such crisis these days, and these men are in so much crisis, is because we have demonized fathers, and devalued men. And because we have demonized fathers, and demonized men, many of these men don't see a purpose to their life, they don't see a value to their life, they don't see a worth to their life. And because they don't see a purpose, value, and worth to their life, what they are doing is going out to destroy the world, because they don't see a place for themselves in it or a part for themselves in it. And that's one of the core reasons I believe a lot of these guys are participating in mass shootings, because if they don't see that place in the world for themselves, then they're going to go out and destroy the world around them. What we really need to help try to combat this escalation of mass shooters and mass shootings is not gun control or a mental health where we're just going to deal with mental health from a shallow perspective. What we really need to deal with this whole increase in mass shootings and this whole increase in frequency of mass shootings is we need a comprehensive investment in men, and we need efforts made to make sure that we prevent boys from becoming beta males by doing things in our culture like showing the value of men in society, showing the value of what men contribute to the society, and showing that men have a place and a purpose in society. But because we are living in a gynocentric world, we have men who are devalued, and because these men feel devalued, this is why we have a man crisis. And it's that man crisis that, again, is leading to so many of these men participating in these mass shootings. And that's why I say we need a comprehensive investment in men, because these mass shooters are just a small symptom in this man crisis that's been going on in America for over 30 years. And this man crisis is only going to get worse if we don't acknowledge the core source of the problem, which is this gynocentric culture and this feminist culture, which devalues men to the point where they feel like their lives have no value, no worth. And because they feel like they have no value and worth, they just go out to destroy the world around them. We have a man crisis going on here in America, and these mass shootings are just a symptom of it. And most people are sitting there debating gun control and these other insignificant issues rather than dealing with the real issue that we need to deal with, and that is the way we are raising boys in America, because women cannot raise boys to become healthy, functional men in America. If you want to learn more about mass shooters or the mental health issues that are leading to many of these mass shooters going out to participate in these murder sprees, I urge you to please pick up my book, The Man Crisis. In that book, I explain in depth many of the reasons why many of some men are out here participating in a spectrum of destructive and self-destructive behaviors, and how we can help these men by learning healthy, natural, male life skills and survival skills, and learning the value of what it means to be a man. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.